Doing absolutely nothing is actually the most productive thing your brain can possibly do. We treat rest as a sign of weakness.
Because we spend so much of our lives terrified of doing nothing. Real rest is not the absence of physical activity. Mental rest is neurologically essential.
It is not a waste of time. It is a neurological investment.
Let's look at a completely different kind of health crisis that we're all facing today.
Yeah, and it's one that you probably don't even realize is a crisis. I mean,
Ah.
think about the culture we live in right now.
Oh, it's all about optimization.
Exactly. We optimize our mornings. We track our sleep with like 3 different devices. We listen to audiobooks on 2x speed while commuting.
Right, getting every ounce of productivity out of the day.
But what if doing absolutely nothing, and I mean literally staring blankly at a wall with zero input, is actually the most productive thing your brain can possibly do?
I mean, in a busy world, that almost sounds like a joke.
It really does.
Because for so many of us, rest just triggers this immediate sense of guilt. You sit down on the couch without a laptop or without a chore to do.
Without a podcast playing in the background.
Yeah, exactly. And within like 30 seconds, this little voice in your head just whispers, you should be doing something right now.
Oh, I know that voice so well.
Yeah.
We treat rest as a sign of weakness or like a luxury we just haven't quite earned yet.
Which is completely backwards.
It is. So the goal of this episode is to just completely dismantle that idea. We're going to unpack the neuroscience of real rest, explain exactly why you are probably doing it wrong right now, and provide some science-backed, highly practical strategies to actually fix it. Welcome to the Living Better podcast. Living longer is a science. Living better is a choice. Quick disclaimer, this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you have any specific health concerns, always consult with a qualified healthcare provider.
Moving away from that, cultural guilt associated with taking a break, it requires looking at the biological reality. Like, what is actually happening inside your skull when you stop working?
Right, because we usually think of rest as an off switch, right?
Yeah, that's the common assumption.
Like you close your spreadsheet or finish a meeting and your brain powers down. The lights go out and nothing really happens until you need to focus again.
But looking at the neuroscience, rest is actually an entirely different operating system booting up.
Which is fascinating, like a whole different system.
Yeah, and to understand the magnitude of this shift, we kind of have to look at what neuroscientists believed before the year 2001.
Okay, so not even that long ago.
Not at all. For decades, the prevailing theory was this idea of the passive brain. Researchers basically thought that when you weren't actively engaged in a task, your brain activity just plummeted.
They thought it just went into standby mode.
Exactly. They assumed blood flow dropped, neurons fired less, and the brain was just dormant. But then, this neuroscientist, Marcus Ricol, published some groundbreaking research in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences.
And this changed everything.
It really did. He used fMRI scans to look at blood flow in the brain, and he used this subtraction method.
Right, taking scans of brains, doing complex tasks, and then subtracting the scans of brains doing nothing.
Yeah, and he was expecting the result to just be a baseline of 0, like no activity.
Because that was the assumption. Doing nothing equals 0 brain activity.
But instead, the result was this massive, highly coordinated network of activity lighting up. We're talking the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, the angular gyrus.
All these areas just firing at once.
Right. Rachel discovered that the brain doesn't power down when you stop working. It shifts energy to a completely different circuit, which he named the default mode network, or the DMN.
Okay, so your brain essentially has 2 main modes.
Broadly speaking, yes.
The first is the task positive mode. That's what activates when you're actively focused, like writing an email or, calculating a tip at a restaurant or navigating heavy traffic.
It's your getting things done network.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the moment you stop doing those things, the default mode network takes over.
Which is why calling it doing nothing is just a terrible misnomer. I mean, the brain consumes about 20% of the body's energy.
Wow, 20%.
Yeah, and incredibly, That energy consumption barely drops when you switch from the task positive mode to the default mode network. It remains wildly active.
So it's still burning calories, still working hard.
Very hard. It's initiating these critical processes that simply cannot happen when you are focused on an external task.
I love this analogy we were talking about earlier. Think of the task positive mode as the daytime librarian.
Oh, this is a great way to picture it.
Right? So the library's open, people are frantically returning books, asking questions, checking out new material. It's chaotic. And the librarian is just trying to keep up with the massive influx of information.
Just surviving the day.
Exactly. But when you stop working, the doors lock, the patrons leave. And that is when the night shift librarian, the default mode network, takes over.
And the night shift librarian actually has to do the heavy lifting. They take all those books that were just dumped on the counter during the day and start sorting them.
Which is memory consolidation.
Exactly. Your brain sifts through the massive influx of daily information, basically deciding what to encode into long-term memory and what to just discard.
But the librarian doesn't just, shelve the books and call it a night.
No, they read a few pages, they start making connections.
Right. They realize, oh, hey, a history book from yesterday connects perfectly with a poetry book from 3 years ago. And they put them right next to each other.
Which is exactly where creative problem solving happens.
It's so cool to think about it that way.
And that sorting process also handles emotional regulation. The DMN helps you make sense of your interactions, like why that comment from your boss bothered you so much, or how to navigate a conflict with a friend.
It's processing the social stuff we didn't have time to process in the moment.
Exactly. And on an even deeper level, the DMN engages in autobiographical memory. It constantly stitches your past experiences together with projections of your future.
So it's literally the network that constructs your continuous sense of identity. It tells you who you are.
Yeah, which explains why doing nothing is so incredibly vital for identity formation.
Because if you never let the night shift librarian work, you never actually reflect on who you are. You just react to whatever is right in front of you all day.
Which is a terrifying thought, honestly.
It really is. And, this validates an experience I know every single person listening has had at least once.
The shower thought.
Yes, the classic shower thought. You are banging your head against a wall trying to solve a problem at work all morning. You are intensely in that task positive mode.
Just forcing it.
Right. And nothing is working. You are stressed. Your vision is literally blurring from staring at the screen for so long. You finally just give up. You go take a warm shower and you just stare blankly at the tiles.
And suddenly, boom.
The answer just drops into your head out of nowhere. It feels magical.
It feels magical, but it is pure mechanics. By stepping into the shower, you removed the external demand. You allowed your brain to finally switch over to the default mode network, and it immediately found the connection you couldn't see when you were forcing it.
It was doing the background update.
Exactly. And there's actually a 2012 study by Baird and colleagues in the journal Psychological Science that proved this experimentally.
Oh, the mind-wandering study. I love this one.
Yeah, they took participants and gave them a highly demanding creative problem to solve. Half the group was told to just keep focusing on it, while the other half was given a break to do what they called mild mind-wandering activities.
And we are talking about activities requiring almost zero cognitive load, right? Like sorting simple shapes.
Right, super basic stuff.
Mhm.
And the people who engaged in those undemanding, mind-wandering activities performed significantly better on the creative tasks afterward compared to those who stayed laser-focused the whole time.
Because their default mode networks were allowed to connect the dots in the background.
Precisely.
Okay, wait, I need to stop you there. Because if the DMN activates when we stop working, why is everyone walking around feeling so completely drained all the time?
That is the million-dollar question.
Think about a typical weekend for you. You finish a grueling week, you spend all of Saturday and Sunday technically not working. But you wake up on Monday morning feeling just as exhausted, if not more, than you did on Friday.
And the exhaustion comes from what we substitute for actual rest. We have to look at this 2019 paper published in Nature Reviews Neuroscience.
Okay, what did they find?
It explains that constant digital stimulation completely blocks the brain from entering these deep restorative states.
Uh, I know exactly what people are thinking right now because I feel it too.
The phone habit.
Yes,
Yeah.
because after a 10-hour day of putting out fires, collapsing on the couch, pulling out my phone, and scrolling through TikTok for an hour or, binge watching 3 episodes of a dramatic TV show, that feels incredible in the moment.
It feels like relief.
It feels like I'm tuning my brain off. So why does my brain interpret this as work?
Because we reach for the phone out of exhaustion. The brain is an energy hog. When you are burnt out, your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for discipline and long-term planning, is completely depleted.
So my discipline is basically gone by 8 p.m.
Exactly. So your limbic system, which seeks immediate rewards, just takes the wheel. Scrolling provides high dopamine for zero caloric effort, but it is a physiological trick.
A trick. So even though my physical body is completely horizontal and perfectly still on the couch, my brain is basically sprinting on a treadmill.
Yes. Passive scrolling is what researchers actually call disguised activity.
Disguised activity. Wow.
Because think about it. When you are rapidly swiping through a feed, your visual cortex is processing bright, moving images. Your auditory cortex is processing overlapping sounds.
And emotionally, I'm experiencing like micro spikes of anger, humor, outrage, and empathy every 3 seconds, depending on the video.
Exactly. You are forcing your brain to remain in a semi-active, highly stimulated, task-positive state.
That is so wild. So it's the worst of both worlds. You aren't accomplishing anything productive, but you also aren't giving the night shift librarian the quiet library they need to actually consolidate your memories.
It is a massive energy leak.
I really want to acknowledge the guilt cycle that comes with this too. Because you feel burned out, so you try to rest. But sitting in actual silence feels deeply uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable for most of us.
So you reach for the phone out of habit, just to numb that discomfort. 2 hours evaporate, your eyes burn, you feel even worse, and then the guilt just compounds.
Yeah, and breaking that cycle requires completely redefining our terms. Because real rest is not the absence of physical activity. It is the absence of demand.
The absence of demand. Okay, let's really explore what that actually means.
So when you watch a high-paced thriller on Netflix or read inflammatory comments online, the content places a heavy demand on your attention and your emotional processing centers.
The algorithm literally demands your engagement.
Exactly. True mental rest only happens when there is no external input demanding an immediate cognitive, visual, or emotional response from you.
Okay, but if an absence of demand is the goal, should we just be couch potatoes?
Definitely not.
Like, should we lay in an empty room staring at the ceiling for 4 hours a day? Because we also know from tons of research that sitting around all day is terribly destructive for our bodies.
We have to draw a very clear scientific line here between mental recovery and physical inactivity. Confusing the two is super dangerous.
Right, because there's research published in The Lancet about this, right?
Yes, their research shows that excessive physical inactivity, which they define as being sedentary for more than 8 hours a day, drastically alters your metabolic processing.
Which increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance, and overall mortality.
So we have a biological paradox. Physical inactivity is physically harmful, but mental rest is neurologically essential.
Right, so if you just become completely sedentary to rest your brain, you are actively damaging your heart and your metabolism.
Exactly. Threading this needle requires looking at high performers who have actually mastered this balance.
Like in Alex Sujong Kim Pang's book.
Yes, rest. Why you get more done when you work less. It's a fascinating book. He profiled Nobel laureates, prolific authors, top-tier scientists.
And what did he find?
The common denominator isn't that they grind for 16 hours a day. It's that they intentionally schedule rest as a core, non-negotiable part of their productivity system.
So they view rest as the partner to their work, not just the reward for completely burning out.
Exactly. And what stands out is the type of rest they engage in. It rarely involves just sitting perfectly still in a chair.
Right, and that aligns perfectly with the rest test.
Oh, yeah, the BBC project.
Yeah, it was this massive project conducted by the BBC in 2016. They surveyed over 18,000 people across 134 countries, and they asked people what activities genuinely made them feel the most restored.
And passive screen consumption was nowhere near the top, I'm guessing?
Nowhere near it. The top answers were reading, being in nature, and simply daydreaming.
That makes so much sense.
Because think about the underlying mechanism of those three things. They do not force a pace on your brain.
Right.
When you read a physical book, your brain sets the speed. If you need to pause and stare off into space for a minute, the book waits for you.
And when you walk in a park, there are no sudden jump scares, no algorithmic feeds, no notifications demanding a response.
It is the perfect low-demand environment for the default mode network to just thrive.
Which brings us to the actionable framework for all this.
Because knowing the neuroscience of the default mode network is fascinating. But how do we practically build true rest into a schedule that is already overwhelmed by obligations?
We pulled the research together to break this down into 3 practical steps you can start using today.
Okay, lay them out for us.
Step 1 is the most effective, but also definitely the most difficult. You have to schedule true idle time.
Like, actually put it in your calendar.
Put it in your calendar, 10 to 20 minutes daily as a baseline, and the rules for this idle time are strict.
How strict?
No phone, no visual input like a television or an iPad, no music, and no podcasts. You just sit, go for a walk, or stare at a window. You are intentionally creating a vacuum of demand.
I'm going to be completely vulnerable with you. Doing that is terrifyingly boring at first.
Oh, it's brutal.
If you are used to putting in your AirPods the exact second you lock your front door to go outside, going for a 20-minute walk with just your own thoughts feels deeply uncomfortable.
It feels almost biologically wrong.
Yes, your brain literally starts searching for a problem to solve. And I really want to validate that fear of intentional boredom for you listening right now. If you try this tomorrow and you feel twitchy, anxious, and desperate to check your pockets for your phone, that means you are doing it right.
Because that intense discomfort is dopamine withdrawal. Your brain is craving the high stimulation hits it's used to getting every few seconds from your screen.
And when it doesn't get them, what happens?
The nervous system sends out these mild panic signals, assuming something is wrong. You really have to ride out that initial friction to build the muscle of intentional boredom.
Okay, but if 20 minutes of silence is just too daunting for someone, step 2 is a great bridge, right?
Yeah, step 2 is to utilize low stimulation activities throughout your normal routine. You don't necessarily have to carve out extra time in your day. You just change how you do the things you are already doing.
Like walking the dog without headphones.
Exactly.
Right.
Or folding the laundry in silence. Taking a shower without a waterproof speaker blasting a YouTube video.
Or sitting at your kitchen table while your coffee brews instead of immediately opening your email.
You are reclaiming these tiny, mundane pockets of the day and gifting them back to your default mode network.
I love that, gifting them back. Okay, what about step 3?
Step 3 is for when your brain simply refuses to settle down, even in the quiet. This is where we bring in specific, structured protocols like non-sleep deep rest or NSDR and Yoga Nidra.
Oh yeah, Stanford neuroscientist Andrew Huberman frequently discusses the profound impact of these practices.
He does. And NSDR basically involves lying down and listening to a guided audio script that directs your focus to different parts of your body and your breathing patterns. It typically takes 10 to 30 minutes.
Let's explain the mechanism here, though. Because how does listening to a voice tell you to relax your jaw actually restore your brain? It sounds a bit woo-woo.
It sounds woo-woo, but it creates a massive physiological shift. When you are stressed, your autonomic nervous system is dominated by the sympathetic fight or flight response.
So cortisol is high.
Exactly. NSDR forcefully shifts your nervous system into parasympathetic dominance, which is the rest and digest state.
Okay.
As your heart rate drops and your breathing slows, your brain waves shift from high-frequency beta waves down to alpha and even theta waves.
Mimicking the restorative patterns of deep sleep while you remain completely awake.
Yes. And this shift allows an area of the brain called the striatum to pool dopamine, naturally replenishing your reserves without a screen.
That is incredible. Okay, to make this highly practical for everyone listening, we created the traffic light system. Three categories: what to stop, what to start, and what to monitor in your daily life.
All right, red light. Stop doom scrolling in bed when you are tired. Just stop it.
It's so hard, but yes.
Stop constant multitasking, like trying to answer complex emails while sitting on a muted Zoom call while eating lunch. Your brain is frantically switching contexts, which just drains energy.
And stop feeling the need to fill every single empty moment of your day with external distraction.
Exactly. Now, green light. Start practicing intentional boredom. Build that muscle we talked about.
And start getting daily nature exposure. Research shows that just 20 minutes a day of looking at fractal patterns in nature, like the branches of a tree or the shape of clouds, significantly lowers cognitive fatigue.
Especially compared to looking at the hard right angles of city buildings and screens.
Definitely. And start taking device-free breaks. If you have a 15-minute break at the office, leave the phone in your desk drawer.
Which brings us to the yellow light. Monitor your inputs. Keep a close eye on your daily screen time, particularly the hours spent on algorithmic social media.
Monitor the critical difference between mental fatigue and physical fatigue, too.
This is key. If you are mentally exhausted from staring at a spreadsheet, a 20-minute walk will restore you. But if you are physically exhausted from running 10 miles, you might need actual sleep.
And finally, monitor your sleep quality, because proper nighttime rest is the biological foundation that makes all waking rest possible.
Now, we do need to include a warning label here, a yellow triangle for our traffic light system.
Yes, this is very important. For people who deal with clinical anxiety, unprocessed trauma, or severe intrusive thoughts, the sudden introduction of complete, unguided silence can actually cause a massive spike in panic.
Because the constant noise of podcasts and social media is a highly effective coping mechanism.
It drowns out the internal monologue. And when you strip away those distractions, whatever you have been suppressing tends to get very loud very fast.
So if you fall into that category, how should you approach this without causing a panic attack?
Well, do not force yourself into a 20-minute silent room. Start with incredibly short durations. Try just 3 to 5 minutes of a low stimulation activity.
Or heavily rely on guided NSDR. Having a calm voice, giving your brain gentle, non-demanding instructions on where to place its focus, provides a safety net.
Right, it gives your mind an anchor rather than leaving you completely alone in the void. You can slowly, gently build up your tolerance to quiet over time. Rest should heal you. It shouldn't traumatize you.
That is a perfect way to phrase it, because we spend so much of our lives terrified of doing nothing. We equate it with failure, laziness, or falling behind our peers.
But doing nothing is the exact biological mechanism our brains require to keep functioning at a high level.
It really is the missing ingredient in our modern recipe for cognitive longevity and daily happiness.
So let's distill everything we've covered into 3 clear takeaways for you to remember today. Number 1, your brain absolutely needs nothing to function at its best. That is how you allow the night shift librarian, the default mode network, to consolidate your memories and creatively solve problems.
Number 2, digital consumption does not equal recovery. Passive scrolling is disguised activity that drains your prefrontal cortex.
And number 3, intentional rest improves your memory, your problem-solving abilities, and your emotional regulation. It is not a waste of time. It is a neurological investment.
So we have a challenge for you, a real-life experiment.
Yes. Find 10 minutes today, just 10 minutes, and do absolutely nothing. Don't fall asleep, don't look at a screen, don't play music. Just sit on a bench or take a quiet walk.
And just observe the biological friction. Notice how loud your brain gets at minute 3, and then observe how it eventually settles by minute 8.
Pay close attention to the clarity you feel afterward. You might be shocked by how much energy you get back from just 10 minutes of zero demand.
And if this episode changed how you view your own burnout or made you realize exactly why your weekends aren't working, please share it with someone in your life who is always running around saying they are too busy.
We all know someone who desperately needs scientific permission to stop.
Absolutely.
But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to mull over. We learned today that our brains rely on the default mode network's idle time to process our emotions, stitch our memories together, and construct our unique identity. It was literally how we figure out who we are.
The brain needs the quiet to simulate the self.
So if we are constantly filling every single silent moment, every commute, every line at the grocery store, every moment before falling asleep, with other people's content, other people's opinions, and other people's lives, are we slowly losing our own unique sense of self?
That is a question worth sitting in silence with.
This is Living Better Podcast.